In this video, we're going to go through the process of how we can use GitHub with our Xcode environment to start working with our basic labs that we have. This is going to include a starter file, and we need to be able to clone this file after we accept the assignment. So first, we need to go through the process of tying our account to the GitHub Classroom. Once we have our account all set up and squared away, subsequent times it's just going to go through and create our repos for us automatically. But this very first time that we go through the process, we're going to have to associate our GitHub accounts to our actual name within our GitHub Classroom. So in this case, when we have our GitHub assignment, it's going to have a link. If we click on the link the very first time, it's going to make me either sign into GitHub or to go through and create an account. Now, I would recommend that if you do not have an account that is for your email account, I would go through and create one for that. You don't necessarily want to go through and have all of these repos that we're generating for this class associated to your personal account, because it's going to get kind of mucky after a while. Now, in my case, I have a personal account that I've set up that's not really one that I use. It's kind of my testing account. I'm going to be using that to log into GitHub, and this is going to be my Jenny Kunkel at proton.me. Go ahead and get signed in. I'm not going to save this. I'm going to go ahead and associate this GitHub account that I've just logged in with to my name in the classroom. So I'm going to go ahead and click on my name in the classroom. Once I do that, it has now linked my name to my GitHub account, and I can go through, and when I accept the assignment, it's going to go through and create a repo for me. So I can go ahead and accept the assignment. Now I have my repository that's been created for me that has been forked from a GitHub repository, and we can see that it has W01, L01, Swift Basics, and it has my name, and we can see where it has been forked from. Now, in this particular GitHub repository, for our starter labs, it's going to have a Swift file already set up for us. Now, if we would look at the Swift file, and we can basically see the contents of this on GitHub, it's just a bunch of comments that are asking you to do something. Okay, so if we go back to our repo, we can read what the actual contents of our README file is, and it gives us some information. Now, the information you see here should be the same as what you see in the actual assignment. So it's one of the two places that you can actually go through and read. Now, I would suggest that as you're going through these labs, if you have any questions on some of the comments, you can also look at some of the grading criteria or the rubric to try to get more information from what it's asking you for. If you still don't understand what each of the comments is asking for, then you can reach out to me. So now we have our repository all set up. We can go ahead and clone our assignment within Xcode. If you do not have Xcode open, go ahead and open it. I'm going to go ahead and clone the Git repository. The very first time that we do this, we're going to actually need to add a hosted account. So click on the little arrow, and this is going to give us an option to go through and add a hosted account. So I can click on the plus sign. It gives us a number of accounts that we can use. In our case, we'll be using GitHub, and we can go ahead and continue. Now, at this point, we need to go through and type in our account that we were using. Mine was Jenny Kunkel at proton.me. me, and I can go ahead and where it says token, I can go through and create a token on GitHub. If I've already logged into my account, which I needed to do to tie my GitHub account to my actual GitHub classroom, I should still be logged in. And I can go through here and add a little description, maybe Xcode access to GitHub account, and I can pick an expiration for my token. Now in my case, I don't necessarily want my token to disappear before the end of this class, so I'm going to make mine no expiration date, although it is not recommended to do that. One of the other things that we need to do is we need to go through and select a scope, and I'm just going to go ahead and select the repo as the scope. Once I've done that, you can read through all of this stuff. I'm going to generate my token. Now my token, I'm going to copy it. Once I copy it, I'm going to come back to Xcode, and I'm going to go ahead and paste it in. And then use that to sign in. And it should show us that I am now signed into GitHub with my account. And it's asking me what type of clone I want to do, whether I want to do an HTTPS or an SSH. If I need to do an SSH, then I'm going to need to use an SSH key. Now that I have this all set up, I'm going to go ahead and exit out of this. And I'm going to go ahead and it's showing me the things that I can go through and clone. And in this case, I want to pick the first one and say clone it. Then it's going to ask me where I want to place this. In my case, I'm going to go ahead and locate an option. Maybe I want to make a new folder within this. Maybe something like working folder. You can make it whatever you want to make it. I'm going to go ahead and clone into that folder. Now, as I look at this folder, I can see that I have my Swift file and I have my README. Now, if you're not familiar with GitHub, we have two different repositories that are created. We have a local repository, which is part of my file system. If I would go back into my terminal window here and switch into my directory that I just created, so if I change directory to my documents, and then change directory to my CIS 280, go into my working folder, I should be able to get into my other directory, so I can go ahead and do a W01 L01, and I'm just going to do a star there so I don't have to type in everything, and I can do an ls-al. I want to make sure that I do an AL. Now when I look here, I see basics.swift and I see readme.md. I have other things that are actually in that directory. This directory is considered to be my local repository, and it is going to be marking any changes that I make to that file, and it's going to be keeping track of it in this .get file. The get ignore is going to be basically telling what files should be pushed up and stored within the repo. So this is basically a swift.getIgnore file, so it's only going to be taking things up that needs to be stored for Swift at that point. The other things, so those are our hidden files, and the other things then of course are very visible. Now again, the README file is basically what we see here on this page. It's also the same contents which is shown in the actual overview here. Now once I decide that I have my folder all set and ready to go, I can go ahead and use my Xcode to actually edit the file. Now if I want to go through and I'm already in this folder, I can just go ahead and open basics.swift. my Xcode is open, and I can go ahead and start making changes. So in this case, it's basically asking me all these different things, and I can say, okay, here on the very first one, it's asking that we create a well-named constant to reflect the number of programmers, and it wants us to make this a type that is an appropriate type. If we think about a number of programmers, that's going to be a whole number. We don't have half programmers at this point at our college coding team. So we would start with let, give it a name, maybe number of programmers. Recall that we should be using camel case. We want to give it an integer type and set it equal to 12 because we want to do essentially a declaration and an initialization based on what it's telling us here. Okay, so you get the gist. We're making some changes. We can go ahead and save our changes. Now somehow I accidentally shut down Xcode, so I'm going to open it back up in my terminal window. Just going to hit the up arrow to open it back up. What we want to do is we want to get into the integrate menu, and we want to get into the commit. So once we get into the commit, it's going to give us an area that we can add a commit message, and then we can press the commit button. But before we do that, we have changes, they're uncommitted, but we need to stage the changes. I can either do that here, so I'm going to stage them. Once they're staged, then I should be able to go through and go up here and add some type of a message. Typically, you're going to add done with assignment or something to that effect. Updated lab file. I'm not going to say done because I haven't really completed it. My button should enable, and I can go ahead and commit. And it should commit and push the file. If I click on the push, it's going to show origin main, and I can say push. Now, if I go back to my GitHub session, I should show, if I get back into my iOS, that I have updated my lab file. It's showing with 2 commits now. If I look at these commits, I should see my updated lab file. It's going to give me a comparison of what was changed in that file. So it's basically showing me this particular statement was added. And it pretty much works like that. Now, if I made changes, some more changes, because I wanted to store whatever, and I went back through and added more changes, I would just go through that same process. I would go in after making all my changes, go into the integrate, do my commit. It's going to show me my changes. I can stage my changes. Once my changes are staged, then I can go ahead and enter my commit message, hit the commit, and then I can hit the push and push it up to GitHub. Now that doesn't mean that you're done with the assignment yet. If we go to GitHub, one of the last things that we want to do is we want to go through, make sure that we are on this main page, grab this URL, copy it. Then we want to bring over our assignment, and we want to go through, and we would want to post the URL to the assignment. I'm not exactly in the mode that I can actually do that, but if I went through and viewed it as a student, unfortunately it's locked, so I can't do that. There should be a place to put that URL pasted in. Once you have that URL pasted in, then you can go through and submit it. So that's essentially what is required. You need to post a URL to the assignment. The URL that needs posted is the URL for the main page of your repo. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me.